The Mountaineers get back in the win column once again, winning games in back-to-back weeks for the first time this season. We're going to break it all down here tonight on ITG.
Caution, this podcast contains bad jokes, optimism, and a healthy disdain for Pat Narduzzi. Watching it may increase your actual knowledge of actual football.
ITG.
All the pieces are in place for us to have a chance to win it all.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have.
There's Owen Schmitt in the building.
Like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
Towards the end, he in here, Jed Drenning.
I'm not much of an athlete.
The thing that's non-negotiable is playing hard and playing tough.
And Wesley, Valen, Uhler. You are in the gun.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the In the Gun podcast. I'm Schuyler Callihan, and I'm flanked by the best teammates in the business. Tonight, we've got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, and, of course, our big friend, Big Daddy Sean Mariner in the house tonight. We're going to get some stories from this game day between West Virginia and Colorado. We'll break down the matchup as well. But first, a shout out to all those that make this possible, starting with JR and the fine folks at Toothman Ford. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. To Rick Lewis in Fortis for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. Make sure to visit fortis.us.com. To Johnston Equipment, you can go check them out on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. You can also visit their website at johnstoneq.com. That's Johnston with a T. And to our latest edition of the ITG family, the Book Exchange. Get all your Mountaineer gear and WVU apparel at the Book Exchange. You can visit either of their two locations, downtown or Evansdale on Patterson Drive. You can also check out their website and use that In the Gun 20 code either in person or on the website to get your 20% discount. So, boys, it's nice to be sitting here talking about another win. This is the first time, by the way, that we've recorded on game day this year. So you can tell we're excited. And we just got off the phone with Owen, who's
where's Owen at?
Yeah,
Isn't he supposed to be on here?
I'm eating a donut, West Virginia. Population one.
Yeah, it's like, well, here's what happened. First of all, speaking of the Book Exchange, I made a stop by, so that's why I got these threads for military appreciation. I got my ITG, my In the Gun 20 discount when I was there, off Patterson Drive. But guys, town was a buzzing. We got the big win. We've never done this. It kind of the opportunity fell into our lap. We wrapped the post game up a couple hours after the game. Me and my wife started heading home, and I realized I might make it home in time to, like, if you guys were so inclined, to hop on and give a few remarks and get this thing up post haste, which we've never done, as you said, Schuyler, on post game or on game day. Now Wes is out on the coast with the Steelers, traveling with the Steelers. They have a game in LA this weekend, and Owen is in a different place in a different way. Both Big Daddy and I saw Owen later today, and he wasn't in great shape, but I've seen him in worse shape. So I called him on the way home, and I said, hey, here's what we're planning on. I texted him first, and I tried to reach him on the phone, and I couldn't, and then he called me back, and I told my wife before he called me back, I said, I think I got a better chance of getting Eisenhower, reaching back through time and getting Eisenhower to come on the show tonight because of where Owen is right now mentally. And the whole 20th anniversary of the Sugar Bowl was back. His teammates were back in town. Steve was honored. He was back in town. So Owen's having a good time. So when right before we popped on the air, I called him. I said, all right, let's make a call back and see if he can pop on with us. And I said, where are you? And his response, what was it, Big Daddy?
Eating a donut.
Eating a donut. Okay, that's where he is. So Owen, for those wondering, if you look on the map, you'll see eating a donut, and that's where Owen is. So Owen's not with us. Wes is not with us. So I text Big Daddy, and I said, look, I thought it was a long shot. I texted like 7:30, and I figured, okay, about 8, we can get rolling, hopefully, because I'm trying to make it home by 8. And I said, look, I know this is a long shot. If you're so inclined, and I'd imagine you have a life, unlike us, we're going to jump on and give a few remarks about the recap of the game at 8 o'clock. Absolutely. He texted right. He doesn't have a life, right?
First of all,
absolutely. So
I'll always
the
get with
three
you
of
guys. Yeah, I'll always
the Three
get with you
Stooges. It is.
But
yeah.
Secondly, on game day, since we have two boys, Shelby is always like, I'm going to get the hell out of here and go and do something. Well, today was Went back home to see the nephews, hang with me and Pappy, and then they lit the tree and they got to meet Santa up at Tanger. So
Hey,
it was just me
Perfect.
hanging out at home, like, hell yeah, I'll talk about today. That's fine by me.
Perfect. So, and Big Daddy, you're going to stick around
Yeah.
to hear Big Daddy's story because something was at play in the last couple days with the Colorado equipment truck that went viral and then became part of the game day experience at Mountaineer Field. So you're going to want to hear this. We're going to break down the X's and the O's and get into some of the fun matchups and some of the things that played out in the game. But it's kind of fun to talk about this fresh, just a handful of hours after the game and get this thing up and about. But yeah, it's kind of exciting, guys. It's a first for the ITG family here.
it really is. And before we get to break, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this because obviously I wasn't there in person today, but just seeing those guys back, the 20th anniversary, the reception they had to be a pretty cool moment because I know, over the years, there's always been this kind of stigma, or I don't know what you want to call it, around WVU and bringing former players back. And sometimes they feel welcome, sometimes they don't. But with Rich back, it truly seems like there's an open door now for these guys. And I think it's been talked about and documented a lot too that because of how things ended with that team in '07, with Rich leaving and Bill coming in and filling in the spot, like it never felt like that '07 team even has really got the respect that it naturally deserves because of all that went on. So it's good to see that those guys got that recognition.
Absolutely
Daddy,
incredible.
where were you? You were upstairs,
I
right?
was upstairs, yeah, but I saw some of the guys post game. So yesterday I was over at the facility getting stuff ready, and Steve came in for his big welcome back. He had an interview with Tony. That's where they took the photos that they put the video together for the Hall of Fame, everything. So I got to see him yesterday. And then today, I just saw them all come out on the field when we did the recognition, and that was awesome. And then post game, they were everywhere. I was down in the locker room after we got done with all the pressers, setting some stuff up and grabbing some stuff. And there's Najee Good out of nowhere. And he just sees me. We just start yelling and I give him a hug. I run back upstairs and that's where I saw Owen. And I've told this story a bunch of times about one of the nights I saw Owen out when we were in college together. And that was the same kind of greeting I got this evening. And scared the people that were with him who didn't know who I was and didn't know why Owen was talking to this potential stranger. Then out of Rich had to have something going on back there in the office because out came Rashid, out came Morty Ivy, out came like if you look at that picture of the reunion that they took today, the first 8 guys in the photo all just came pouring out of that room. So it was awesome. Jed, I don't know if you noticed this or not. Did you notice that they put the model front and center holding up the trophy? Mike Lorello, the jawline's still the same, the hair's still flowing, but he made sure he was front and center holding onto that trophy.
Device rep. So he's making some cabbage, right? He's done well. But
Uh-huh.
one of the things that stood out to me, I made my way, I was the opposite end of the sideline, made my way down to that end of the sideline. And as I did, as the players are being called out on the goal line, because they also separately called Steve out, which I thought the only thing they got wrong there, Steve should have been the other end zone. He should have been the Louisville overtime end zone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But so anyway, the 20th anniversary, the Sugar Bowl team was down there. What moved me the most, because I was making my way out onto the field to get a couple pictures and some video of it, and I passed out by the hash marks Dusty Rutledge, who of course was on that staff, Jeff Castile, who was of course on that staff, Noel Devine, who was so close to all those guys, even though he wasn't on that team. Those guys were all out on the field, almost trying to be part of it, even though they were working. And just the looks and the pride on their face of seeing those guys in such a moment. So it was a thousand ways of a thousand different versions of happiness, and you couldn't be more happy and proud, and the cheer that they got,
Yeah.
and it was a special moment. And I kept thinking to myself, I was like, 20 years, that does not on any
Mhm.
level seem like
No,
20 years. Just
no.
imagine what you'll be doing 20 years from now. I shudder to think. But and then after the game, TV TNT did Rich first, so they
Mhm.
grabbed him on the field during Country Roads, and then I'm trying. He knows I'm right there with him, so I'm just waiting for the best time for Tony to throw it down to me to do our interview. And it was difficult because there were so many former players that just wanted a moment with Rich, wanted a picture with Rich. So, we waited for several of those to play out and unfold. And then finally, I got a couple of minutes with Rich for the interview, but it was special for him. It was special for them. It was a cool day. And to cap it off with a victory, that's absolutely what you needed and what you want.
I don't know if it was good, Big Guy.
I take this stuff a little too seriously at times, but when we were getting together the script and grid this week, I asked them, I was like, do you guys have our marketing department, is it okay if I go through and I try to get a song from '05 to play underneath for them? And they were like, yeah, we trust you. Those are your guys. Go and do it. So I had a lot of fun revisiting some of the old Bent Willie songs from 2005. We settled on Disco Inferno Instrumental by 50 Cent. A lot of 50 Cent songs that week.
Okay.
It's crazy. This week we had women's basketball Monday, men's basketball Tuesday, men's basketball Thursday, women's basketball last night. We got a men's basketball game tomorrow, a women's basketball game on Tuesday, and then men's basketball against Pitt on the 13th. So I haven't seen my family. That's why I'm here alone. But Eric Little filled in for Bill Nevin Thursday night. Eric Little, U92 guy that I've known since college and everything. And we were on the heads talking about it during a break, and he was behind me in that game throughout the whole game. And he just being able to talk about those memories and then seeing them back on the field. I want to give a shout out to our director, Eva Buckman, today. We really wanted to, Pat White and Coach Rod can't really be a part of it because there's a football game going on. We're just we've got the 2-minute timeout in between, but we made sure that she got a shot. I don't know if you notice in the recognition, the last shot we have of that Sugar Bowl team is Pat looking over at them and giving them a wave from across the field. They nailed it with the camera shot. And that was the one for me where I was like, oh man, that's awesome. Because you're exactly right. Everybody kind of shifted a little bit more towards that end zone. Even Pat took a minute to look over at his boys and give a big wave that we got lucky enough to catch on camera.
That's awesome. Gotta love that stuff. And I tell you what, I was there the night they did the 10th anniversary, and I want to say that was Oklahoma State, maybe.
So.
And that even felt like there's no way that's been 10 years. And here we are another 10 years later. So, I mean, it got to a point here at one point, we'll get to here after the break, where I thought they were going to have to try and sneak another year out of Steve Slayton because of the running back situation. But hey, I mean, we're bringing G Leaguers down in college basketball. There's NFL guys that played in the pathway program that are making their way to college. So I'm just saying, maybe, and Steve still got a year technically. So I'm not. But anyways, we're going to go and get to a quick break. On the other side, we're going to break down that win over the Buffs and talk about what it means moving forward here with 2 games left. So stick around right here on ITG.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
Back in the gun, it is Jed Drenning, Big Daddy, and Schuyler Callihan here, and it's time to get into the X's and O's of this thing. West Virginia winning again 29-22. Scotty Fox throwing for 202 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. Dior Hubbard running for 64 yards on 16 carries. And Juju Lewis, just a shade under 300 yards. We kind of talked about it in the preview. Seems like freshman quarterbacks, for whatever it is, just always happen to have a big day against West Virginia. But this kid is special, and you can see why he was so highly recruited coming out of high school. Guys, just your opening thoughts on getting the win. And let me start with this because I know may sound like a bold take, but I think this game was probably more impressive to me. Maybe not in the way it happened, but just getting the win because situationally, you could have said, "Oh, it could be a sort of a flat spot." You went on the road, beat a ranked team, come back home for a Colorado team that's been blown out 2 weeks in a row. It's kind of the same situation that Houston was in a week ago. You get the early kick. It could have been bad at times, and things were starting to look like it was getting a little uneasy, and they just found ways, whether it was ugly, pretty, or anything in between. I thought this win was more impressive just because of what happened a week ago.
They had this in common, and I brought this up to Rich and to Scotty Fox, for that matter, on the field and post game interviews. Uh, there were several moments, and Wes talked about this. We had a conversation about it in the preview this week. Houston last week in that victory on the road, they pushed back every time we asserted ourselves. It's
Yep.
like we wanted to try and separate, but they just wouldn't let us. They kept having their moments. But every time Houston had a moment, we responded with a moment. Um, and that was the first time we'd really done that all year. And this today felt similar to that. I mean, this game was so like we were trying to pick like, we do things in the post game wrap up. Me and Andrew and John and Tony, we do things like, what was the play of the game? What with this one? Wow, you could pick 8 to 10 plays, and you're not going to be wrong because it was just so back and forth. And every time you thought you had an opportunity to separate, here came Colorado again, and then Colorado brings the balance of the game into question for the better part of the second half. But every time they tried to make a run, we responded with a run, and that's why it felt like that Houston game. That's the string that drew those two wins together. I think was every time Colorado made a push, or every time Colorado asserted itself, we said, not so fast, my friend, and answered with something on our end. And it might have been a special teams play. It might have been a defensive stop. It might have been a big play on the offense. It was complementary football to find a way to respond and continue to maintain that slight edge through the end of the game to find a way to win. Big Daddy, that's the first thing I would say that I think of when I saw this football game.
100%. We've said it a bunch before historically, bend but don't break. A lot of big plays for Colorado through the air, some really talented wide receivers. Some of those guys, there wasn't even any separation. They were just making great catches. But defensive pressure today, we were in that backfield non-stop. And, sometimes we got home, sometimes we did it, and that's when the bigger plays got there. But to be able to have that threat, I thought really that changed the outlook of the game where, okay, even if they have a play or two, we still have complete faith that somebody is going to get home. Reed had two, Ben Bogle had two, countless others were there and just causing disruptions. And it was really, really, I thought that was the big difference today was the consistency of pressure. Jed, I do want to ask you, historically, in a Rich Rod offense, did you guys really perfect the wheel route that he loves and that we use so well, or has that been a more recent during my time with Steve development?
There's different ways to run the wheel route. Of course, we used to use the mismatch of Mr. Slayton on the wheel route because of his speed, but there's also a route combination that we call the switch route. And that is a two-person route between the slot and the wideout, where the outside receiver is running a version of a slot go, that's a slant and go up the hash, and the slot is running what would amount to a wheel route. You get a bit of a rub, but there's offsets. If some defenders are over top, you can offset, and now you can bring routes underneath. But it's somewhat of a wheel route. Not in the true sense that he for many years has run it with the backs. Ours was more tied to what the slot was doing, meshed out with what the wideouts were doing. But yeah, you hit on a key point with the pressure. The 7 sacks were impressive, and I think just as impressive or just as critical were the 15 TFLs because you put them off schedule with that young quarterback so many times. They weren't just facing third and down. We were giving them a dose of what we're used to offensively, these third and longs, these really adverse situations. Guys, the last time, and I think John dug this up on the post game, the last time that we had more than 7 sacks. I mean, we looked at it and it was the 2019 Baylor game on Halloween. We almost upset them. But the 15 TFLs, the last time we had either as many or more was that 2001 80-7 win over Rutgers 24 years ago. So you don't see 15 TFLs come along very often. That is, in a special way, truly disruptive. But the important part was knocking them off schedule. And I thought what happened was there were a lot of games within the game. There were spurts where Colorado had some success running the football. They were having some success, and this is a Pat Shurmur offense. Even though Pat Shurmur for the last couple of weeks is no longer calling the plays, he's still the one who built this offense, installed this offense. You're not going to have a Pat Shurmur offense without a healthy diet of outside zone, that sweep-looking play they run where they hand it to the back out of the shotgun. We got a lot of that. We got a lot of stretch plays in the shotgun, and they had some success with it. Zach made adjustments at halftime. We kind of snuffed it out in the second half, but we slowed them down in their run game enough throughout significant stretches of the game to make them just one-dimensional enough to struggle a little bit more than they otherwise would have throwing the football. Because as much success as they had playing pitch and catch with those, I'm telling you, we talked about it in the preview. Those wideouts are players. That Miller is a player. They're long, they're athletic, they're scary. Just imagine if they had balance throughout the entire game. That what they did was they had a pretense of balance because they had just enough running game to have a pretense of it. But we snuffed it out with those TFLs and that disruption for enough of the game in the run game to make their passing game more difficult than it otherwise would have been. And once again, hats off to our DBs, hats off to our corners. They're undersized. And the concern I had coming in was the length they have at wideout. In other words, we're pretty sticky on the perimeter. Our wideouts have covered well by and large all year. When we have issues, the issues arise at times like BYU, when you're facing Chase Roberts and you're just giving up 6 to 7 inches. That concerns you. Yes, Colorado had a couple 6'2" guys. Yes, they had a 6'5" guy. But by and large, we're sticky. They were just making plays because of their size, even when we had them covered. Here's kind of what the conversation was we had in the post game, and I don't know what this is going to look like moving forward. Yes, the staff has improved the technique used by these corners, but these corners are gifted cover guys before they arrived here. Now, the staff has made them better cover guys, but they're undersized. And I'm not so sure in the era of the portal, in the era of NIL, guys, are we going to get another Rasul Douglas or Daryl Worley? I don't know if West Virginia is going to land those guys anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pre-portal, pre-NIL. I mean, on the open market, those guys are going to demand a premium price, right? So maybe our niche kind of is, of course, you're always going to go after them. You want to have those guys. But now you're going to need far more teams to miss on their projection than missed for us to get Daryl Worley and Russell Douglas 10 years ago. In this era, you're going to have a lot more teams miss on that projection for us to land a guy like that, which means maybe what we're looking at are 5'11", 6 foot type of guys, 6 foot on the higher end that can just cover and are sticky and are athletic and are instinctive. Bring them in here, refine what they can do, improve their technique to the extent that you can. I mean, look at the 3 guys that we brought in at corner. The truth of the matter is they weren't around this staff very long. So you can only improve them so much before you just said, hey, we're going to roll you out there. You got to cover these dudes and see what you can do. And that's been a strength of this defense with a couple exceptions over the course of the season, Schuyler. That's what I've seen. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that battle between Miller and Michael Coates was a fun thing to watch all day. I mean, because it's not like Miller just picked on him all day. And I mean, Coates made a couple plays. He had one pass breakup in the end zone, one, I think, near the Colorado sideline on a third down attempt. So, I mean, he made some plays too. And we've also been talking about a lot here the last few weeks about just finding more guys that have years of eligibility left. And we've seen most of those guys are on the offensive side. Well, as Big Daddy already mentioned, Ben Bogle, like, holy hell, 2 sacks, 7 tackles or 8 tackles that he had in this game. That's a pleasant sight because you're losing Reed Carrico, you're losing Chase Wilson. You're going to need somebody to step up. Is he going to be a starter next year? I don't know, maybe, but he's at least playing his way into more playing time and will definitely have a role. That was huge. And I know this one's kind of an underrated guy too because he's not a starter. He plays limited snaps, but and is also done after this year. But my goodness, guys, the last 3 weeks, it felt like every time WVU's defense needed a big time play, Devin Grant was in there and making something happen. And once again, he did it. And what a lot of people don't realize, that was his former team. Dion cut him. back when he first got there. So that meant something to him.
Devin Grant's been playing really solid football for us. And, when you're going through that inventory of names, and we kind of mentioned this today of, okay, who's on that retention list? Who do you got to prioritize and target? The 30 or 40 guys that you want to look at first to say, yeah, we got to have you moving forward. There's going to be attrition, obviously. But, somebody else, Schuyler, that's on that name, Nate Flower.
Yeah.
Flower has, and you know what? We kind of got him for nothing, but you talk about production. So Nate Flower is into the conversation. We're obviously going to get into what Curtis Jones has done, but Devin Grant's played really good football for us, really solid football. He has a presence. One of those guys who can give you really high level snaps. And as an offense starts to have some issues, and with some of these looks that Zach Alley dials up, and he did dial quite a few pressure looks up against these guys, Devin Grant is sometimes the beneficiary of that. But you talk about Ben Bogle. I mean, the thing about Ben Bogle, he's a West Virginia kind of football player. And what I mean by that is he's going to slip through the cracks because of the measurables. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the twitch. He doesn't have the things that light people's eyes up or open their eyes on the open market. But what he does have is there's something about a second or third level defender who has that natural, true sense of timing as a blitzer. And that's something nobody ever talks about enough. I mean, if you see the big picture of what you're trying to do from a blitz concept defensively, if you understand your role in that big picture, because every blitz concept and every blitz wrinkle is a little bit different. If you understand what's being asked of you and what's happening around you and how those others are being utilized, then what you can do is, first of all, understand the exact angle within inches to how you can maximize your opportunity to have impact. But beyond that, if you just have that timing, that sense, when to hit that open crease of daylight to slip through, make an impactful play in the backfield. Some defenders have that and some don't. Some guys with the measurables that can run a sub 4.5 and come off the edge at 6'5, 245, 250, they don't have that timing.
Yeah.
Ben Bogle doesn't have the 6'5, 250. He doesn't have that sub 4.5, but he has the timing. And he has made the absolute most of that. And this linebacker room, really as a whole, this linebacker room at large really stepped up and performed today in a game that was flawed in so many ways that we'll talk about. This wasn't for the time capsule. That's not what this was. It wasn't pretty. It was very rough around the edges. But at the end of the day, for significant spurts, they ran the football. For significant spurts, they made plays downfield in the throw game. And offensively, we struggled to run the football. We'll talk about that. But I liked the fact that this was as imperfect as it was against. Look, Colorado's not world beaters this year, but neither are we. That's just in. So to rise to the occasion, answer the bell, and do what it takes to do to find a way to win a football game, Big Daddy, all that matters.
It felt early, too, from up top. It was a bit of a rock fight the first couple of drives, just trying to figure each other out. But the very first time Colorado punted, you saw pressure. There was pressure. There was blow up in the backfield. And I saw right away, I bet they saw something. If I can see something, I know they saw something on the sideline. And first points on the board, boom, there it was. That set the tone early, and you could see how aggressive things were going to get. And that was, when's the last time we've had a blocked punt?
That's a great
Talked
question.
about that. Oklahoma State. Let me think. We were talking about that on the
Was that Garrett
postgame, and I think
Green?
well, no, I take it back. We had one in 23, which, let me see, we had one in 23 and then another one like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I need to look at that. But yeah, it's
set
to your point,
early.
Big Daddy.
You could feel it.
That blocked punt came. The first quarter was somewhat disjointed. We're trying to feel each other out. It's like the defense had them by the collar and said, hey, the offense is trying to figure some things out. Where do you think you're going? And it was kind of like a boxing match, feeling each other out with some jabs. And late in the first quarter, when we were still trying to feel things out, boom, here comes this splash play. It was almost a touchdown. He almost got it in the end zone, but it might have even been better because we get the points plus the ball, which we turned into a touchdown. Mm-hmm. So that was such a massive play at a juncture in the game when we were still trying to decide what kind of game this is going to be. Well, it turns out that it was the type of game where we took advantage of that, seized control, jumped out in front, and never seized that control. Colorado, as we said, many, many times threatened to take control, but we never really relinquished the control of that 9-0 lead. We kind of just managed to inch further ahead. As they scored, we scored. As they scored, we scored. So that blocked punt started that cascade of events that ended up really. That's how this game unfolded. But one of the other things about it, the struggles that we had trying to run the football in the first half against a team, and let's talk about this. Colorado, on paper, for several reasons, they were dead last in the Big 12 against the run. They were giving up an average of 5.3 yards per carry, worse than the Big 12. And yet, what do we talk about, Schuyler? What was the strange metric? The
Stuff it.
metric was they also lead the Big 12 in stuffs. Now, why is that? Well, it's because they're a pressure-oriented defense that loves to blitz. Only 3 teams in the country blitz more than Robert Livingston, their D coordinator. They blitz even more than Zach Alley. So what that means is a lot of those blitzes are run blitzes. You're either gonna fill the appropriate gap and clog things up and get a stop, because again, to redefine what stop means, stop is a metric that either means you make a tackle right at the line of scrimmage or it's a TFL. So a 0-yard gain or less. Okay. They lead the Big 12 in stuffs, but also lead the Big 12 in all these. They're worse than the Big 12 against the run and in large run plays allowed, long run plays allowed. The reason is it's all or nothing. It's feast or famine with the way they play defense. Now, for mature offensive lines like Utah's, for instance, who's maybe the best offensive line in the country, the reason they ran for 440 on Colorado, they could ID all those run blitzes. They could ID all those pressure concepts that Colorado was bringing. They'd seal them off. Boom. Now all of a sudden, Colorado's in a bad spot because there is no second level, and Utah was taking the ball to the free safety, making a miss, and off they go. We aren't to the point as an offensive line that we can ID the looks that a veteran Utah offensive line, an elite Utah offensive line can overcome. So we're not there. So it took us a while to sort through that and feel it out. And at halftime, we were really struggling to run the football. That was a major emphasis at halftime by the entire offensive staff, was to find a way to run the football. We were trying to get creative to avoid those run fits between the tackles, those blitz concepts between the tackles. That's where the jet sweeps come in. Again, Schuyler, we talked about it. Nobody has faced more jet sweeps than Colorado for the reason we just talked about. People are trying to get to the perimeter with the football to avoid those interior blitzes because they do it so often. Just like we did today. We had some success, some we didn't. We had more success when we ran those jet sweeps to the tight side where the tight end in our strength is versus to the split side where there was no tight end. The overhang one time came through completely on blitz because we never tight into that side. But finally, when it mattered the absolute most, even in the third quarter, we weren't really having a lot of success running the football. When did we have it? For the final handful of minutes of the football game, when we absolutely had to have it. 70 plus yards of our rushing total came in the final handful of minutes when Colorado, ironically enough, knew we were going to run the football. And Coach Wallace pointed this out during the broadcast. One of the things that changed, we went unbalanced, in an unbalanced look that we haven't showed a lot of. So if you can't run the football between the tackles, one of the things you can do as an answer, add a gap outside the tackles. And every time you're adding an extra tight end to one side of a formation, you're adding a gap that the defense has to account for. So we started giving them this unbalanced look that they weren't familiar with, and they didn't have answers for it. We were finding creases. We were finding a little bit of daylight. And the next thing you know, Dior Hubbard's in a position to make something out of nothing. And nobody's better at making something out of nothing in the West Virginia backfield than Dior, right? And that's what ends up happening. That entire last scoring drive, damn near the entire drive, we showed them that unbalanced look. They didn't have answers, and they didn't adjust well enough. And we drive the field without throwing the football, and that's the most success we had all day. Boy, we waited till the last minute, but it finally came. And that gets into the Curtis Jones piece of what we're talking about. I mean, sometimes coaches think outside the box and make personnel switches. and they get creative just because there's a void and that void needs filled by somebody. You might say, hey, we're thin at receiver. We're going to have to move a DB down there. And maybe the DB gets targeted once because you play him at slot, but he's not really an instrumental part of what you're trying to do offensively. Yes, that's still moving a guy and playing a position he otherwise doesn't play and thinking outside the box. Kind of what we had to do with Rodney and when he played some nickel, remember in the secondary last year?
Yeah.
But how impactful was that? It didn't make a whole lot of difference, right? But what Rich did, he talked about needing a big bodied back because since Ty Edwards, we haven't had one.
Yeah.
And, looking through the roster, he's like, well, we're out of big bodied guys that can run the football on the roster, except, oh, wait a minute. Who's that linebacker / bandit / safety that ran for 1,700 yards as a high schooler? Oh, okay. Well, maybe give him a few reps and once he gets comfortable with it, because Rich first mentioned to us the possibility of Curtis Jones getting a few short yardage carries. It was actually before the UCF game, before the public even heard about this, right? When he was meeting with me and Dwight and Tony the night before the game, he mentioned to us that was a possibility. They weren't quite comfortable with where Curtis was with that yet, repping it out. So he sat on it for a couple of weeks and then mentioned it publicly, and it blew up. And the next thing you know, everybody in the media is doing stories about it. And it wasn't until today, and here you go. So this wasn't just lip service or coach speak or just moving a guy to move him. Curtis Jones got in there and I would argue had more impact with that move than maybe anybody else in this football game. His first carry, the 2-yard touchdown, was almost entirely Curtis Jones.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm standing on the goal line, guys. Big Daddy, you were upstairs. I'm standing on the goal line. And I'll be honest with you, when he got the football, he was immediately smacked. And I thought, well, this has no chance. And Curtis Jones moved the entire pile and reached the end zone. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that happened. And the second one to cap off that beautiful drive where we had them all sideways with that unbalanced look. Now, after trying to contend with this unbalanced look, here comes Curtis Jones again. This big bodied dude that's just there to run downhill and bull through people. They're like, what is this? I mean, Colorado had no idea to expect that. I mean, there was no tape of it. There was no anything of it. Okay. Other than a blurb or a mention in the media. And they're like, yeah, okay, we hear a million of those things a year and it never happens. Well, it happened, and it happened in spades. 3 carries, 2 touchdowns. Don't think that's not a weapon that we will be utilizing moving forward. Now, the only question becomes, to what extent do you grow that role? Do you want to get greedy? Because one of the things I want to look at, guys, Big Daddy, did you notice? I didn't notice. I could not find Curtis. I wasn't, tracking this. Did Curtis play defense today?
He did.
I don't remember. I know he didn't show up on the score. He didn't show up in the scorecard. I know that.
He was in there for at least a few snaps.
Yeah.
Okay. Because he wasn't in there enough to register any stat, which defensively sometimes that happens. But that tells me I'll check PFF to see if it's up yet from a snap count standpoint. But what'd you think when you guys that was refreshing?
Jed, you know as well as I do, coaches are tinkerers. They're always doing something. There's always something in their back pocket. And it's happened here a million times. I can remember when I first got here in 2010, 2011, there was a forgotten package under Bill Stewart that had Scooter Berry and Chris Neal in as extra offensive linemen / tight ends for whatever magic you want to run. That stuff always exists. And when you say like, oh, we might have this, we might have that, a lot of times it can be lip service, right? You're just trying to keep people in check. Seeing Curtis go in and exactly what you said, that first time he got clipped and fighting through, you could okay, this guy was a wide receiver in high school. This guy was a quarterback in high school. Like, oh, okay, great. How good was the competition, et cetera, et cetera. Watching Curtis run, you were like, oh, damn, he was a running back in high school.
That's right.
I like what he said post-game, too. Post-game, somebody asked him, like, hey, did you think that you were in? And his response was, well, I know my elbow hit before I felt my knee hit, so I knew I had to be in based on where I was. And I was like, that is not a linebacker bandit safety talking about ball and body placement getting across the goal line. That's a running back who is now on the defensive side of the ball. So, yes, he could be a big weapon moving forward because old boy's got it.
And this just in, I just checked.
21.
I was just going to say 21 snaps.
Yep.
That flew under the radar for all three of us. But that is a really good question. I mean, is this something that he can grow into throughout the rest of his career, being a two-way guy? We don't see it a whole lot, but I mean, you're only talking about a handful of snaps. I don't think that it's ever going to get to a point, maybe I'm completely wrong, but that he's going to be 15, 20 carries a game. But I mean, when you have that type of back that has that experience from his high school days, he can plow through people. Like I think it can be a weapon.
Will be a weapon, and you're going to use what what you got to do. It's what Rick Neuheisel always says: we got to Apollo 13 this thing. And what Neuheisel means, and there's a point to this, is you remember in Apollo 13, they said, all right, we got to get these guys home. So they gathered all these brilliant scientists in Houston at NASA and said, we got to get these guys home. Here's the issue, yada, yada. And the guys came up with all these wonderful ideas. Oh, well, you could do this or you could do that. Okay, stop talking. We got to get them home. And then they dumped a bag onto the table
All the
only with
random
what's in
stuff.
this bag because that's what they have on the ship. And so they, okay, we got this to work with. Well, that's what you had to work with your roster. So you got to Apollo 13 that thing. Look at your roster,
Yep.
high and low, who fits where, who fits what. Think way outside the box. A guy who was absolutely entrenched on the defensive side of the ball and ascending at a pretty good level, at a pretty good rate, right? He's getting much better as a defender. He's becoming a very productive defensive football player. But to look at that and say, hey, no, wait a minute. 1,700 yards rushing in high school kind of translates for what we need if in a limited role. If all we're asking him is this, because the bigger thing is, if you ask a kid to do something on an every down basis, now you can't control the scenarios. If you put him out there on first down and say, "Hey, we're going to do this," well, the next thing you know, they give you a look that you absolutely hate, and you're trying to get out of that, and he doesn't know what you're checking into. That's a different animal, right? But just to say, here's the situation: it's short yardage, come hell or high water, by hook or by crook. This is what we're running. We don't care about alignment. We don't care about box numbers. You just take the football and do what you used to do in high school with that big frame you got. And that's what he was able to do. Now, to what extent can that role possibly, expand beyond that? Who knows? Let it unfold. Let it be natural. He's a bright kid. High football IQ. Never say never. If it's something that we can use to win football games, you'll see more out of it. If it's not, you won't. And that's just the nature of it. But it was exciting. It was fun. I mean, we haven't seen that since Ty Edwards. I mean,
Yeah.
people don't necessarily understand or appreciate the difference that bulk and size can make in short yardage situations running the football. I mean, it is difficult to bring a big, strong man to the ground more so than somebody 40 pounds lighter than him for obvious reasons. It's physics, and physics is on our side when Curtis Jones is in a short yardage situation, getting some push and making things happen.
Yeah, I had to do a double take because when he was first in there, I was like, "That's Curtis Jones, right?" Like,
It's,
so it kind of took me off
it's,
guard. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I did not think there was any chance in hell he was getting in the end zone in that first one. But credit to him. Now let's go ahead and talk about Scotty Fox. Of course, can't get out of here without talking about him. Kind of an up and down day for him. Kind of missed some things as Rich talked about in the post game, but I thought for the most part it was a pretty decent outing. I mean, he didn't have much help from the run game for the majority of the night, so you have that to work with as well. But the two interceptions, Jed, I want you to kind of go ahead and dissect what you saw. The one on fourth down where he threw it across his body in the middle of the field, and then the second one looked like Chemo just got knocked back, had pressure in his face, and may have had a hand on the ball at the line of scrimmage. I couldn't really tell. What did you see on those two picks?
Well, again, this is the first time we've done a recap without me having film study at my disposal. I have yet to have an opportunity to watch the tape. I'm looking forward to doing so. Hopefully, start tonight, but definitely tomorrow. I'll be diving into it. But the biggest thing I'll say about Scotty is the last couple weeks, every conversation after the game I had about Scotty, I started with the same thing. He didn't put the football in harm's way, right? And as a young quarterback, that's especially impressive. 2 weeks ago, it was in a TCU game that he had no run game to help him, and he was really pressing, and he still didn't turn it over. Last week, it was against a good defense in Houston, and he still didn't turn it over. So that was impressive to see that in consecutive weeks. Once again today, as you just hit on, Schuyler, not a lot of running game for the lion's share of the really 3/4 of the game to speak of helping him. We were one dimensional, and not only are we one dimensional, but we're one dimensional with limitations up front. So when you got to throw the football, you're even somewhat limited in the ways that you can throw the football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you can't run it, normally you just kind of do what TCU does. They're a pass heavy team, and they say, all right, fair enough. take 3 steps, plant your foot, scan the field, and throw one of these wide outs between the tackles. Josh Hoover, that's what we're going to ask you to do. We can't necessarily do that. We're too leaky up front. We're not consistent enough up front. It helps to move the launch point, get Scotty on the perimeter. That limits what you can call, what you can do, and what you can execute. So that's the first thing. So I would ask Scotty one more step to take as a young quarterback growing, true freshman. It's remarkable the steps that he has taken. It really is. Now, the next step might be say, hey, understand the script, understand the environment around you. The environment is that every time you step onto the football field, you're playing behind an offensive line that has obvious limitations. So everything's on the table. You almost have to be ready at any juncture to hit the escape hatch and get rid of the football, and that's just fine. But he's a competitor. He tries to make things happen. So when you look at the 2 picks, first, one was on 4th down. I understand you don't want to go down with the ball in your hands. You got to put it up somewhere. I'd rather you put it up downfield on the sidelines toward one of those targets than throwing it late back across the middle. We actually got a little bit of a break there because the Colorado DB was dumb enough to pick it off and give us an extra 8 yards instead of just batting it down. So we gained 8 yards in that sequence when he should have just batted it down. But at any rate, that was an ill-advised throw. He's going to look at that, and I called it in the postgame, one of those throws as a quarterback that you make that you wish had a fishing line on it, because as soon as it leaves your hand, you wish you could
Reel
get
that
it
thing
back.
back
The
in.
second it's barely out of your hand, and you're like, what did I do? And you know before anybody in the stadium's what's about to happen, and you got to watch it just like everybody else watches it, and that's one of the worst feelings in the world. So that's one he's going to want back. The smart part, don't go down with the football on 4th down, put it somewhere. So I like that part of it. Just put it somewhere other than laid across the middle. But the other pick, and this was part of, Rich even said in his postgame, one of the DBs did tip it, did get a hand on it, but this is one I definitely want to watch on the tape. Rich was kind of, taking up for his young quarterback. Why wouldn't he? He said, hey, it was deflected. You can't really put that on him. I need to go back and watch that because I'm not even sure when I watched the replay on the big board, it was tipped by the DB. He was under pressure. He was under duress. I didn't necessarily, there was somewhat of a miscommunication between him and Cam. I didn't like where that football was going anyway, to be honest with you. Whether it was tipped or not, I didn't. In other words, Cam was hell-bent for leather outside release vertical up our sidelines. And Scotty, that's not the throw he was trying to make. It was more of an offset type of throw, or he was expecting a break on the route type of throw. Something wasn't in sync there. I don't know what it was, but again, I need to study it and scrutinize it further on the tape. But I didn't like the throw, even if it wasn't tipped, with where he appeared to be trying to go with the football. So those are just 2 things that the best thing about it, Schuyler, he still brought value in the pass game. Absolutely. I mean, at one point, he was really carving them up and humming for probably a stretch of 2 quarters. And that's kind of what was carrying us when we couldn't run the football, was him being hot-handed as a passer. I mean, that wheel route to Dior was a beautiful thing. It's just he made some great throws and some really efficient throws, but there's other areas he can grow on. But the biggest thing, outside of the fact he also pitched in, was one of our biggest assets running the football. I like it when any quarterback, but especially a young quarterback, it's like a pitcher when he doesn't have his best stuff. Sometimes you got to labor through those nights, those games, those afternoons where your best stuff just isn't there. Your breaking ball's not quite breaking the way you like it. Sometimes that's going to happen. You're not always going to have your A game. You got to find a way to win ugly, labor through things, and that's what Scotty did. He's a competitor. He found ways to make just enough happen to overcome those turnovers, overcome those mistakes. We were -2 in turnover margin. That didn't help us. The fumble, in or approaching the red zone, that was a scoring opportunity lost in the first half. The turnovers hurt us today. They weren't our friend. In recent weeks, they've been our friend. Let's get back to the fact, especially, Rich mentioned bowl eligibility in his post-game press conference, so we're allowed to talk about it, right? So here's the thing. The next 2 opponents, you're almost going to have to find a way to win the turnover battle or the turnover margin to have a puncher's chance to compete in those football games at Arizona State and with Texas Tech. So let's get back to that ball security. Learn from what you learned, the plays that you made that were mistakes, and you always want to learn when you're winning. And Scotty is a guy who will soak every part of it up. He's going to be a better quarterback because of the game he played today, not just the good plays he made that he can build on, but more specifically, the plays that hurt him. He will grow from those within a week.
He definitely will. And I think the most encouraging part about it was after the second interception, He went 5 of 8 for 32 yards. I mean, it's not like they asked a lot out of him, but he still finished the game well. Didn't let those 2 interceptions rattle him. So nice to see him finish the game strong. So we're going to go and get to one more quick break here. And then on the other side, we're going to get Big Daddy telling this story about the truck and everything that went into it. So hang tight. We'll get to that, and we'll close things out here on this episode of ITG.
When the sun's just rising and the work won't wait, you need the equipment that works just as hard as you do. Johnston Equipment delivers power, performance, and reliability day in, day out. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling loads, or planting the future, our tractors are built to take it and then some. Strong, reliable, ready.
Low rate financing available on select Coyote models.
Johnston Equipment, farming made easy.
Get all your Mountaineer gear in WVU apparel at the Book Exchange. They're the locally owned and operated retailer with more than 90 years of selling everything you need for game day and everything else you need to show you're the ultimate WVU fan. Shop at their 2 locations at downtown Morgantown or Evansdale on Pattison Drive, or online at bookexchangewv.com.
When shopping online at bookexchangewv.com, be sure to enter code INTHEGUN20 at checkout for an awesome savings of 20%. That's right, 20%.
Back in the gun here to round things out here in this recap episode of West Virginia taking down Colorado. And before we get into Big Daddy's story about the truck here, Jed did want to note one more thing here about the game. So, Jed, floor is yours, and we can pass it on to Big Daddy.
Well, it's one of these things that I've always said. I understand I'm an outlier and I'm a weirdo, but I'm that guy that maybe at least one of my, if not my favorite part of the game of football. And I don't know why this is, but ever since I was a kid, it's been clock management. I mean, that is one of my absolute favorite parts of football. And I loved it as a quarterback. I was very hands-on with it as a quarterback my whole career from an early age. And I really appreciate good clock management. I really do. And it's frustrating because it's such an afterthought to so many coaches, so many really good coaches, that not only at the college level, but at the NFL level, you see questionable clock management cost people games time and again, all the time. And today what ended up happening, and it was to our benefit, and this was just egregious. Okay, you had a situation, and I should pull out the play-by-play.
I know you're going with this now.
Necessary. You had a situation approaching the 2-minute warning that, Colorado had 3 timeouts and they're down 10, and they're around the 20-yard line. Okay. And first of all, they went for 1 4th down that I thought they'd kick it on. That threw me a little bit, but this was around the 20-yard line. So what they end up doing, and got inside the 2-minute warning, wasn't it ticking down to about, I probably should pull out the game book to really specify, but here's what you're thinking. You're thinking in that situation, okay, I have 2 possessions to get 10 points. Now, when do you get to 10 points and when do you get to 3 points? Well, obviously, you don't want to do anything desperate on a 4th down or from a strange field position. So if you get the ball down inside the 5 and you're down 10, all of a sudden it makes sense to risk it. Okay, maybe I won't be down here this close again. It's worth it, since I'm this close, to maybe go for it on 4th down and get the touchdown now. And the argument would be, because then all I got to do is get back to the 40-yard line for a long field goal attempt to tie the game, as opposed to getting all the way down here again, right? I might not get back here again. Well, Colorado, first of all, was around the 20. So you can debate what you want about the merits of going for it or not going for it, kicking there. I would have, they had 3 timeouts. My thinking would be kick the field goal, go down 7. Now you're not in a desperate situation at all. That's the beauty of having 3 timeouts. When you have 3 timeouts, you kick the field goal, you're down 7, you kick it deep. It's no onside kick. Again, don't get frantic. Kick it deep. Now get a 3-and-out with your defense. Force a punt from deep in there into the field. And now with plenty of time to go, well over a minute, you get good field position needing your 7. So that's what I would be thinking, okay? No matter what Colorado might have been thinking, all thoughts were lost when they did the most egregious of all possible things. You talk about the cardinal sin. They thought about it, and then did you see what they did? Took a timeout. I'm like, I can't stress enough the difference with less than 2 minutes to go in a football game of having 3 timeouts versus 2 timeouts. It's a different species of game. When you have all 3 timeouts, everything is right in front of you. But when you get down to 2, the game's basically over. So what ends up happening when you burn that timeout, all you're doing is saying, hey, we either recover the onside kick, or at some point, WVU is going to be able to burn 40 seconds off the clock because we just took that timeout. Now, at the end of the day, we converted the 3rd and 3, and it didn't matter. We truly snuffed it out. But had they stopped us on that 3rd and 3, first of all, Rich would have gone for it because it was inside the 40.
That is much post game.
But second of all, he would have gone for it with about 16 seconds left. Why? Because you took the timeout you didn't need to take.
Yep.
Meanwhile, there should have been about 56 seconds. And now you're really in a tough situation. And you're thinking, if you're West Virginia, man, I got the ball just inside their 40. Do I really want to go for this and have them stop me with almost a minute to go? But because you wasted and squandered a timeout, I didn't understand any of that. First of all, the not realizing that you needed 2 scores and you should have kicked the field goal earlier. But the burnt, wasted timeout really drove me crazy. Now, I recognize and apologize that most listening aren't my level of geek when it comes to this type of stuff with clock management. But I was just like, you have got to be kidding me. I'm like, well, first of all, why aren't you kicking it the first time? Not just for second time, the first time. He finally did kick it. That's finally what he ended up doing. Why did you spend a timeout? Insane. I'm like, and you know what? I'll say this about Rich. That's one of the reasons that Rich and I so philosophically always got along. We kind of see the game the same way in that respect. And, everybody's going to make mistakes once in a while, but by and large, Rich is really solid with clock management and his use of timeouts, when to use them, when not to, when to use them on defense and when not to. But that was an epic failure on the part of Colorado, an epic clock management failure. And you see clock management failures every week, but that was a huge one.
When they called it, I had a feeling right away that the game was going to be over, because even if West Virginia doesn't get that first down, they're still working with limited time and a long field to go. And odds are you're probably still going to be able to get the stops. Yeah, I wasn't right there with you. When they called timeout, I was like, might as well put a bow on this one, because they just basically gifted you the game.
Certain things that, again, it's the quarterback in me, it's the clock manager in me that drive me crazy. Like, again, you treat your timeout somewhat differently in the first half than the second half for sure. But there are certain circumstances, like back when I was coaching, and these are the conversations I would have with my quarterbacks. I'd say, dude, if it's 3rd and 26 and you take a timeout to talk to me, you better have a really good reason. Do you think you enhanced our chances of converting that 3rd and 26 or staying out of harm's way? Those timeouts are worth their weight in gold. I want 3 of them in the final minutes of the game, because if I go from 3 to 2, you just completely changed the dynamic of this entire game, how it can wind down, how it can finish. Guys, I would do things like this. This is the degree to which I go crazy with this. I would have conversations with Rich when I was coaching with him. I'd say, hey, how about this? Something we put in our pocket. I'm all about situational football. That's what coaches always do. They look at every possible scenario to be ready for it, right? I said, I think one of the things we should we should have a punt formation in which we shift out of our punt formation into some zany, crazy offensive formation that they've never seen, with an aggressive posture. Okay. And he said, well, why'd you do that? Why would we do that? I said, well, here's when I would want to run this. You would reserve this shifting out of your basic punt formation for, first of all, a tight game against a good team, sometime in the 3rd quarter, early in the second half, when the ball's around midfield. Right? Now, here's my thinking there. Do you see where I'm going with this? Maybe you don't. My thinking is this. I would do this for one reason and one reason only.
Burn them a timeout.
It's a tight game, right? You have the ball around midfield. Now, what's the defense going to do if you go into some crazy situation on a 3rd and 4, some crazy formation? What might they do?
Panic and call timeout.
Yes. Worst case scenario, you get a delay game, big deal, and you punt it anyway.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm doing this is to force them to take a timeout that I'm hoping they might need in the final 2 or 3 minutes of the game. I only want to do that to get them to waste a timeout. That's like I said, the links that you sometimes go when you appreciate the value of a timeout, especially in the second half.
Time
But for
management.
Dion to do that,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, time management in football at the end of a game is the weirdest crux of athletics meets mathematics. That's where a lot of people struggle. Like the old 80s adage of, nerds don't belong in football. That's why it's good to have a nerd on your football team, because they are going to look at those mathematical scenarios. If this happens here, what is our time for this? If they have 3, we're looking at this scenario where they could still get the ball back with this amount of time and this and that. That is all statistics and mathematics. And I think that's truly why some teams, some coaches struggle with that, because it's not just straight up football. You have to bring in a lot of variable factors to that, and that can be difficult.
On Jed too, I think
Still
what
know
you were
what's
talking
essence.
about with that first
What's that, Schuyler?
with that first opportunity that you were surprised on they passed the
Yes.
field goal.
Yeah.
What weren't they on the plus side of the 2-minute warning there too? Wasn't it like
Yes, they
2:11?
were. Yes. So you still had 4 timeouts with
Yeah.
a 2-minute warning. But to distill this down to its essence, really what time management comes down to is thinking 2 steps ahead. I mean, what you're saying is, all right, here are the possibilities for right now. Okay. Based on this possibility, this possibility, this possibility, what are they going to do in turn? Not just next, but their second step beyond that. What are they going to do? Because that will dictate what you do. You see what I mean? That's all you really got to do is think 2 steps ahead. And as I've said before, any quarterback should be doing that anyway. And I think coaches think like quarterbacks by and large. But if you're managing a clock, just ask yourself, that's if you're taking a timeout, if you're mulling over whether or not to kick or go for it, knowing you need 10, all these types of things, especially when you're on the plus side of the 2-minute warning with 4 stoppages of the clock at your disposal.
Yeah.
You know what you're not doing? You're not thinking ahead.
Yeah.
You're not thinking ahead. Like for instance, we had a situation against TCU that at the end of the game, Rich managed that so well that we tried the onside kick. And you know what? We didn't even have to. That was just like Rich trying to enhance his odds. We still were in a good situation from a timeout standpoint. But he was like, you know what? I like the fact we had the 3 timeouts. That's why I kept them. But I'm even going to add the extra chance of maybe recovering the onside kick, which we almost did. And if we don't, then I'll stop him against the clock. Because you could kick it deep and say, hey, I'm going to stop him deep with a 3 and out, and then get the ball in more favorable field position instead of that's the only toss up between onside kick or no onside kick if you have all the timeouts. But that's what Rich did. He put himself in position. He had either option. But what Dion did, he did the opposite. Why would you do that? I don't know. I don't know who Dion's looking to help make informed decisions there. But again, if you just look a step or 2 ahead, you will understand. Ask yourself, all right, if I do this and give them the ball here, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Like if you have the ball around midfield and there's 1:20 to go in the game, okay, and you're facing an offense that's not playing well and it's kind of sputtered for the second half, and you have a 3rd and 6, okay? Well, something that needs baked into the equation of your call is, all right, if this doesn't work, yes, I'm stopping the clock for them if I throw an incompletion, and even if it's 3rd and 3, and you want to throw the ball, you're like, that's pretty risky. You might stop the clock. Okay, if I give them the ball at their own 20 or inside their 20 with 1:05 to go, and they haven't scored since the first quarter, how open do you think they're going to be, right?
Yeah.
That's going to impact my play selection. You're thinking ahead to what they're going to do. That's really what that comes down to. And when you do something like Colorado did today, you're very obviously not thinking ahead to what they're going to do. So, I mean, it just frustrates me and drives me crazy. But I love the fact that we were the absolute beneficiary of it today.
Yeah.
Hey, Dion. Thank you, partner. So let's go and round this thing out here.
Off my soapbox.
Big Daddy with the story with the Colorado truck getting stuck and how you guys were able to use that and amp up the crowd, because that was pretty brilliant. I gotta admit, as soon as I saw it, it's like Sean and his buddies.
That's a total team effort here. So obviously, when it happened last night, we had a women's basketball game last night. pretty much everybody that works football was at women's basketball last night, and it's all anybody could talk about. The pictures, the video of that truck. How could his GPS do him like that? What is the driver doing? Just on, and we're all laughing about it. Crew call was about 7 a.m. for me today. I get in, I'm checking in with Chris O for some stuff. And he had created a new video for today. We call it that blue screen of death. We love it where it, puts up and makes everybody think that our computer's shut down. Well, he tries to do something specific for each team if he can fit it in. And he had one for Colorado today where they played Rocky Mountain High. Wrong John Denver song, bud. Welcome to West Virginia, that kind of thing. And as I'm watching it, it's a good video. And I went, oh man, you know what we should have done? We should have snagged one of those pictures of the truck getting stuck. And he was like, oh yeah, but it's, it's 8 a.m., games in 4 hours. It's hard to edit and render a video like that with something like that. Like, okay, cool.
As what the truck did, Big Daddy?
Go ahead.
Do people know what happened with the truck?
Oh, do they not? I mean, I would hope if anybody is watching in
the explain that
they themselves have pictures of what happened. But for those of those who might not be initiated, obviously Morgantown has some weird wonky roads if you weren't familiar with that. For the equipment trucks of opposing teams to get here and get to the stadium, there are a few relatively easy ways. Most include getting off of 68 or 79 and working the long way around. There ain't no shortcuts in a semi in Morgantown, West Virginia. You take your time and you get there. Well, the Colorado truck is on 3rd Street by Ashbrook Liquor in Morgantown on a Friday afternoon. Now, I myself have been lost in Morgantown a number of times, not necessarily through any fault of my own. It might have been due to other things occurring at the moment. I have never in my life said, I'm going to go to the stadium and found myself on 3rd Street in Morgantown. My buddies lived on 3rd Street. There was a house right above Ashbrook that we were at quite often. Never once did I say, this is probably a pretty quick way to get to the stadium. So obviously
18-wheeler.
The 18, and I'm built like an 18-wheeler, but I ain't on 18 wheels, okay? People are blowing it up. Obviously, it's on every account in Morgantown, all the student accounts, everything. It's all anybody could talk about yesterday. So as I'm having that conversation with Chris O, I hear my phone go off like 3-4 different times. Obviously nothing surprising on a game day. And I go in and check it, and it's one of our marketing directors. It's Erin Gibson, daughter-in-law of Tony Gibson, married Cody, Tony's son. She said, hey, Cody was talking to me this morning, and he thought it'd be a pretty good idea if you did your forklift backup noise with the truck picture. And I went, I swear to God, we were just talking about that with Chris O. I have the forklift noise in the computer. I've played it before. Hey, that's not a bad idea. And as I get it halfway out of my mouth to Chris O, he goes, on it. And within 10 minutes, Aaron was downstairs in our room, and Chris O had that video that was just the picture with the sound underneath and back him up on it. Now, we were very happy with that. Like, oh, this will be cool. I think this will be fun. Anytime they get a penalty, I think that would be neat. People might get it. Who knows? Couldn't have been a more perfect scenario today. The false start happens, and we all just froze and looked at each other. We're like, we get to do it? Like, click up, and I launch it, right? Boom. And we always keep the windows open. I told you I like to feel the crowd. I like to be with the crowd. I watch my season ticket holders below us to see. And I just saw when that started, they hear the sound and people start clapping and everything. And I saw people double taking the board, and the amount of I saw hands pointed to the board, tapping each other like, look. We were like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. We got something with that. That's nice. And then the next play is another flag, a holding call that backs them up even more. Like, hell yes, let's go. Play it again. I don't care. And even more people are starting to look. And that's when I heard my phone start to go. And obviously we're in play. I'm still doing stuff. And at halftime, I go to take a breath and I open my phone, and it was just, oh boy, I think we might have done something here. And then as the day went on, just more and more and more came through. So this a good idea by a bunch of different folks around me that we were happy to execute. That's the stuff that I love. Truly, when I watch other games and I do that, it's those cool, it's a terrible word, I'm sorry, organic moment. We were just like, hey, what about this? You think that would work? It's timely. It has to do with the game that we're doing right now. We're not forcing it. Like last night, we weren't just sitting around at dinner like, we got it. Hey, here's a good idea. And then the other one, we finished that, and one of our marketing GAs, Brody, messaged me that Coach Prime, play my theme song. And I just said, oh, Brody, like let's try it at the end of the game. And so we did like we did with Pitt. The game's over right before we hit Country Roads. The band plays the fight song, play my theme song right into Country Roads. And I saw people again like, oh,
that's awesome. See, I didn't even know that part of it.
It's the in-game experience, Schuyler. You got to be at Mountain.
I know.
Big Daddy, that was the first thing my wife said to me after the game. I went up to meet her when I'm coming out of the locker room. And she says, the truck on the scoreboard. Oh, my. I said, well, you know how to handle that, don't you? And she said, Big Daddy. I said, exactly. You know by now. And hats off once again, because nothing like having a lead at the end of the third quarter and watching the opposite sideline from halfway across the country, in this case, 2/3 across the country, look at each other when they hear 55,000 plus sing our version of Sweet Caroline. Those Colorado players are looking at each other like a couple D linemen had their helmets off, and I could read their lips when they were saying Pitt. They figured out that part, and they're like, it just blows their mind that we are that into Pitt's nowhere to be seen, and the level of hatred that they're experiencing. It was just, that's awesome. That's delicious.
We beat them. We're playing it. They can't beat us. We beat them. We play it. What I love, I saw tweets and video of it. One actually just popped up on my phone. The camera guy in the cart for TNT, he's up.
Yeah, I saw that.
High-fiving fans. The camera guy is touching fans, singing the song with them. And then when we get to the chorus, he was like, oh, I didn't. All right, here we go. It's funny, Jed, a lot of the first comments sent my way were mac and cheese. Like, you deserve a big pot of mac and cheese after this game. So we had reaching out. And I also, obviously, I'm so proud and so happy to be a part of this. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. I love this school. I love this team. Blah, blah, blah. I've talked about it a million times. I don't know how to feel with some of the accusatory tones that people take. Like the amount of texts I got that weren't, hey, that was cool. It was like, did you do this? Was this you? Did you have a hand in it? Like almost like accusatory of how could you? Like, well, I did a little bit. I pressed the button. It was a group effort. It's fun. Like, yeah, we're here to have a little bit of fun. I do have to say, this was a matchup between Jed, you tweeted it, 2 3-6 football teams. And from beginning to end, that might have been one of the best shows we've ever done, just because 55,000 people were in. I got on the radio early when it was that rock fight, just back and forth, and we're trying to figure things out, and it's 2-0. And I got on the radio and I was like, guys, I can feel this crowd wants to explode. They want something to just blow the roof off of this joint. You could feel it. They were in it and engaged from the beginning. Loved it.
Yeah, I mean,
and the cherry on top of the truck story. In the post game, we're up in the booth. Me, John Antonic, Andrew Caridi, and as we're up in the booth, John's sitting in the middle.
Now, Jed,
he's like, "Oh my!" And he's looking out. The Colorado truck's pulling out and takes a right down towards Sunnyside on the same similar back roads that got them in trouble to begin with. Instead of taking the left on a Don Neyland Drive and working its way up to the interstate,
lanes,
clear sailing.
Both lanes are guiding you to 705 in the highway. It's part of our traffic read since I was born at Milan Pushkar Stadium. Turn left out of both lanes are headed north. Like, just go that way. I used to live on Lawrence Avenue, just above Sunnyside. I would walk to football games from over there. I take the north shortcut every day of my life to get over to football. I know that area. I know Wiles Hill intimately. A tractor trailer, they have concrete stops in the middle of that road as speed enforcers and lane conducers. Tractor trailer can't drive on that regularly, let alone an equipment truck that's got to go far left to turn right back out onto it.
We were trying to figure out, is he going down there and taking the left of the laundromat and trying to go out by Kroger? Is he going straight into the Sunnyside intersection? Where is he going?
So obviously he was not at the game to watch what we did to them on the board.
Yeah, he would have had a little bit
Michael
more
Scott.
awareness.
Michael Scott was driving that truck. Did you remember the episode of The Office where it said turn right? And Dwight saying, no, there's water. And he turns right into the lake. It said turn right, Dwight.
I'll tell you what, some fun entertainment. But look, yeah, like Big Daddy said, hats off to the fan base because I mean, again, it's late November. You're not playing for really much except for trying to get to a bowl game. And once again, they showed out. And I don't want to hear it from these pitters because like they keep coming into my comments because I wrote an article about how bad their attendance was for the backyard brawl. Their attendance, not the entire game's attendance 2 years ago. And that's all they want to hear now. But the number one thing that always keeps popping up with them is like, oh, there's nothing else to do. Okay, so there's nothing. So what you're telling me is there's everything to do on Saturday in Pittsburgh, but there's not anything to do on Sunday, and you show up for the Steelers games? Come on now.
It's always the same to those people, Schuyler. And it's the same people on the West Coast that wouldn't go to USC, UCLA games when there's 40,000 empty seats in the Coliseum, one of the largest cities. And I always look at it like this, like, okay, those things that you have to do, aren't they available to do on the other 359 days of the year? Or how many other Saturdays of the year? Aren't they available on the other 46 Saturdays of the year? And you choose to do them on one of the only 6 that your quote unquote team is in town. I'm like, Mountaineer Nation brings it. They brought it today. The mark of an elite or solid fan base isn't not being front runners and showing up when you're winning. Like I remember a handful of years ago when PJ Fleck had Minnesota humming. I got a buddy that lives up in Minnesota, and he was telling me about these great crowds and this and that. I said, of course you do. You're right in the top 15. You're winning games. Who wouldn't? That's not how you measure a fan base. You measure a fan base during its times of struggle. How do the fans turn out then? Everybody turns out when you're winning, when you're pushing the top 10 or 15. Everybody, who wouldn't? All right.
Well,
except maybe Pitt, right? But outside of Pitt, everybody does. But West Virginia fans show up. They make a difference. They're loud. And the other thing, I made this point in the postgame show. They always talk about like St. Louis Cardinals baseball fans being, real baseball savvy and having a high baseball IQ and understanding how to cheer for a baseball game. I would say the same about West Virginia football fans. I mean, they're very savvy to the sport. They understand the highs and the lows. They know when to get loud. They know when to make a difference, and they just bring it. And to see us come out at 3-6 for a noon kickoff
against another 3-win team,
against another 3-6 team, to run out into what we ran out into today, that says so much. And if you don't think you make a difference, none of this is lost on recruits. Even in this day of the highest bidder gets most of the talent, this still matters. There are certain things that you can't quantify or put a price on. You just can't. And this is absolutely one of those things. It says so much that we can get a recruit to town and just say, look, very few fan bases care like ours do. And then just travel around Morgantown even. People are used to going to one town and seeing the same logo on every sweatshirt, hat, and T-shirt you see everywhere you go, from a gas station to a restaurant to a Walmart. And they see that when they're in town. And I always tell people, look, you can travel any corner of the state. You're not going to travel 2 minutes without seeing someone wearing that logo. That's unique. Outside of maybe Nebraska or a Wisconsin, Arkansas, that's unique. It doesn't happen often. Congratulations. Hats off. Mountaineer Nation, you did it again. Now, we'll revisit this conversation for the most challenging of all home games, the Holy Trinity of kids are out of town, hunting season, bad weather. When we play Texas Tech in 2 weeks, and even when we're 8-1 and ranked highly, we still have 15,000 empty seats. We'll revisit it then. We'll talk about that then. But right now, it's all positive. It's all good. You guys are awesome. You made a difference against TCU. That's one of the big reasons we were in that game. And you certainly made a difference today.
There is nothing better in this world. There was a point today, 2 points actually. We are playing a video. Band is playing at the same time. Band's starting to wind down. We launch a video to get things going, or we're playing music. We're just trying to keep vibes high. And the band has to stop, and we have to stop our music. Why? because the fans, not me playing graphics on the board, not a prompt from anybody, the fans have started a Let's Go Mountaineers cheer from one side of the stadium to the other. And I have said a million times, put it on my tombstone, that is sacrosanct. I hear that chant, shut everything down. Everybody shut up. Let that fans did that.
It's well stated.
Not prompted, not anything. That's that St. Louis Cardinals baseball knowledge. That's that West Virginia football knowledge. But hey,
and you know what?
The band's playing great. He's playing tunes. Love it. Right now, they need to hear us, not just screaming, not just making noise, unified in a let's go cheer. And boom, we come onto the field on defense, and it's just ringing out. There's no more beautiful sound in the world to me than that.
Credit to you, Big Daddy, for understanding what it means. Don't step on that moment, right? I mean, don't step on that moment. Like Tony and I have talked about, like a lot of times as a broadcaster, and they don't get better than Tony Caridi, sometimes the best thing you can say is not saying anything. Like you think of the Vin Scully call after the Kirk Gibson home run, when he limps up to the plate, Eckersley's on the mound, he swats that thing out of there. And what was it, for 2 solid minutes? Vin Scully said nothing, so, hats off to you, Big Daddy. Yep.
Why would you want to hear somebody talking or scream, that's a home run, when you can hear the sound of the bat and know it immediately? Why do you want to hear me playing Hot to Go? That was a song from because it might get some fans going, when we can hear a call and respond from each side of the stadium that's going to light a fire. And like you said, Jed, you don't think that doesn't play? Okay, a recruit can go anywhere. Yeah, every high school has a PA system. There's a 13-year-old who knows how to play songs off of his iTunes. Cool, there's a DJ for you. They don't have a let's go cheer like that. Those recruits are hearing that. They're seeing what it means to the team. That's important. It's atmosphere for a reason.
Unconfirmed.
For these moments, Schuyler, when we get this thing humming and it's rolling, we're going to think back. Remember it was 3-6? You didn't see this environment coming, and I'm telling you, visitors will not want to step through that gate.
Unconfirmed, and Big Daddy might kill me when I say this because I'm putting pressure on him.
Yeah.
But you might want to get there for the Texas Tech game because he's going to put something big up his sleeve and really do something cool. So, no, I'm just kidding. You have to be there to find out what the game plan is.
I can guarantee you that. Even though it's a week after Thanksgiving, you're hearing beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, the remix, because I'm playing it.
All for it. Yes. So that's going to do it for us here tonight on In the Gun. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. A big shout out to Big Daddy for hopping on here with us to talk about this win. It's a good feeling, guys. Let's do this more again. Maybe 2 more times, right? So
absolutely.
We'll be back here in a couple of days. We'll have barbecue at the beer truck leading up to Arizona State, and then we'll also get into our preview for that game as well. Phil Steele Friday once again, and then we have the bye week coming up. So we'll have some stuff up here for you in the next coming days. But until then, be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WV football podcast. Take care, everybody. For Big O, Wes, Big Daddy, and the Signal Caller, I'm Schuyler Callihan. We'll see you back here in a couple of days. Take care.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.